All right. Hello, welcome. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. This is the first session of the official launch for the 2023 International Integrative Mental Health Conference. My name is Sahal Farzam, founder of the conference and also a practitioner myself of Chinese medicine of 20 years standing here in Melbourne, Australia. I'm so excited and super inspired to be here with you. I first want to say thank you to those of you who are here live with us and to those who will be watching the recording. I want to sincerely say thank you for supporting this vision, this work, this project. As you know, this is a very important area of work, the mental health, emotional trauma, emotional well-being, emotional intelligence. Specifically after the many events since the pandemic and post-pandemic, you know, most of us who have suffered, like I said on the welcome video, privately, but also publicly. So an important area of work, specifically in our area, in our industry. Now, I know this is an international integrative conference, but it is essentially a Chinese medicine-based event. So you all know that we have so much to offer in the area of work when we are working with emotional trauma and mental health. So for you to be here and, you know, purchase your ticket and support this vision, it means a lot to me, but also allows me to have this space available where we can do this like online, where, you know, you might have your teachers throughout the month, your mentors, your friends, your colleagues, and we all get to learn collectively and we all get to collaborate, we all get to engage with each other. So it means a lot. And I want to say thank you for supporting this. I want to say thank you for our speakers, specifically our guest speaker today from the Netherlands, Johan, and also the many speakers throughout the month. And also a quick thank you to the organizations who are supporting and backing this event. Now, in your slides on the third page, I believe, is the contact details for all these amazing organizations. They're people that I engage with, they're part of my network, but they've also helped me spread the message of this important conference and important work. Their full bio is available on the website at iimhc.com under a tab called Backed By. So please make some time to check them out as well. And I want to say thank you to them as well. Now, like I said on the welcome video, if you haven't actually received or seen the email, I send an email with a welcome video. It goes for about 15 minutes, a little bit unconventional, but I didn't want to spend too much time right now going through all the meets and greets and introduction and taking up Johan's time. So there's a 15-minute video that goes through a little bit about the vision of this conference and why it started, but also some housekeeping. And I don't have it right in front of me, but you should all have a PDF of the schedule for the entire month. And that's on that email as well. And that will show you the presentation topic, the speaker, and the times, and the different major time zones for all of the events, including, most importantly, the Zoom link. So please make some time to watch that video if you haven't already. So like I said on the video, I want to get straight into it. I just want to say thank you to you and the speakers and the supporters. And I'm going to read out Johan's bio and then get straight into it and pass the mic and the screen on to Johan so we can get straight into it. So just a moment while I bring up Johan's bio. And here we go. So Johan Duveen has worked in healthcare since 1972. He has practiced acupuncture in his private clinic since 1980 and has taught Chinese philosophy and acupuncture internationally for almost 40 years. From an early age, Johan was fascinated by Eastern philosophy, meditation, and relationship between body, mind, and spirit. He believes and experiences that self-understanding through self-reflection and internal development is an integral part of Chinese medicine. He's inspired by his teacher, Dr. J.D. Van Buren, a pioneer in the field of applying heavenly stems and earthly branches acupuncture in the clinical practice. Johan recently shared the experience and understanding of the significant but historical, often forgotten approach to acupuncture in a book, Applying Stems and Branches in Clinical Practice, Dynamic Dualities in Classical Chinese Medicine. And we have a copy of the book on the slides. And Johan, you might want to share that when I pass it on to you as well. There it is there. So be sure to grab that book. I would normally have that. It just didn't arrive in time, this one, so apologies for that. Now, just quickly before I pass it on to Johan, questions. By all means, ask as many questions as you need to and want to. Please put it in the chat. Now, I will be helping Johan with the questions. We do intend to take care of the questions at the end because we have a 2-hour segment, and you probably saw Johan's slides. There is a lot to get through, comprehensive slides. So we'll get to the questions at the end. Now, Johan's giving me permission that if I see that maybe a question is very, very pressing and pertinent to that area of topic that he's discussing, he's giving me permission to stop the talk and ask him and approach him with that question. So let's try to leave the questions at the end. And again, thank you. Welcome. Let's get started. Let's get Johan de Veen here. Thank you for being here, Johan. And by all means, share your screen and let's kick off the 2023 conference.
Well, first of all, thank you, Sohail, for all the organization and inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. And we'll start off. So, hello, everyone. This is what we're going to do today. The Stems and Branches training is about 2 years. So you can't expect me to talk about all the aspects of heavenly stems and earthly branches. But what we're going to do today is to introduce you into the idea of working with 10 heavenly stems, but not individually. Like the core part of working with heavenly stems and earthly branches is that we make a birth chart, like you see here in the background. And from that birth chart, we look at why that person is ill. So every illness is treated differently because every person is different. So that we can't cover today, but we can cover the general idea of what heavenly stems are and how you can use them in processing trauma. That's the idea. So I will give you an introduction and then we will go into the heavenly stems and the points related to it to treat and processing trauma. There are a lot of slides, so probably we will go quickly sometimes, but it's needed to understand the flow of the thought model. And so I invite you to think with me, not to just lay back and see what I have to tell, but to follow and to be with me in the story of this webinar. And when we talk about processing trauma, I created you could say, a treatment model or thinking model, but that's not just a technique. The points we will cover is not that you just randomly can say, okay, I need that now. And no, that's not how it works. You need to think for yourself. And so it is, in the reality of the clinic, it's different because you have your intuition, the interference, how do you call it, the connection with the patient. You feel, you have compassion or resentment or anything. So it changes also the treatment. And another thing which I would like to specify is that everyone nowadays seems to have trauma. Who hasn't had a trauma? What is a trauma? And so a trauma, as I look at it, is something what happens in the past, or maybe in this moment, but usually it's in the past when people come in, which is still living in the present, which is still bothering you in the present. So it's something which happened with your chi in the past, which was frozen somewhere or fragmented, and it's still bothering you in the present moment. So it's still a living entity in here and now. Now, some people tell me, well, it's good that you have a trauma because you learn a lot about it. You learn from it. So a trauma is very positive. And I think that's complete nonsense. The trauma has no sense. That makes no sense to have a trauma. Suffering is not of any use. We shouldn't have any suffering, but we have. The whole world is suffering. Everybody for ages, for thousands of years, is suffering. And when we look to the world, then everyone is suffering for a great deal. So it doesn't make any sense that we do that to each other, but the answer to it does. Every time when you feel that you're traumatized or you're suffering or you have pain or anything like that, it definitely the answer, how you deal with that, is most important. That's what we're going to talk about. Now, before we start into the trauma concept, we need some understanding, some mutual understanding. What are the trauma responses? And you have heard about it, like fight and flight and freeze and faint and dissociation, disconnection, we will talk about it. But I connected it here to a horizontal response, vertical, and earth response. What do I mean with that? The horizontal response, on the horizontal level, we as human beings meet each other. So you can meet equal, and sometimes you meet that one has more power than the others, or the other way around. But we meet each other on the horizontal level. But we act, if it is okay, if it is, let's say, balanced, with the vertical axis, the fire-water axis, with the heaven-earth axis within ourselves. That is authentic response. And we will see that most of the time we don't do that. Most of the time we also respond on the horizontal level, not so much on the vertical, authentic Jing-Shen level. And we will discuss that, how it goes and what it means. I put freeze and faint, and we'll talk about it as well, more in the vertical response. Then you disconnect from your Jing-Shen axis, you could say, or the heaven-earth axis. And fight and flight is very much an action between people, and that's more on the horizontal level. And what happens quite often, but is not so often mentioned, is that actually people dissociate or disconnect from the real situation. Not from the real situation as such, but a part of them is not connecting to the real situation. So it can easily happen that something terrible happens now, and I can be very practical and say, we have to do this, we have to do that, now we go away, and this is what we do. But part of me, which is afraid or is completely frightened, is not there anymore. That already is a kind of disconnection. That is a change in your identity, and that has to do with the earth response. We come back to that. Now, quickly about the constitutional acupuncture, as I have called it. It's the acupuncture according to the heavenly stems and earthly branches. Constitution you can describe as you can read here, but with constitutional acupuncture, we do work with what comes from the prenatal constitution, what happens during birth, and what happens after birth, but also what happens now. So when somebody is born with a certain birth configuration, with certain strength or certain weaknesses, that is important for us, but it's also how does that person live at this moment with the energetic configuration at this moment. So that's a huge concept, and that's not what we're going to discuss today. But we will discuss definitely the heavenly stems. Now, this is a chart we use in Stems and Branches lectures, and this is the chart we use in the first year. Here on the top, you see the heavenly stems, and here on the bottom, you see the 5 phases. This is well known to you. On the side here, you see the channel system, and here you see the earthly branches. Now, these are the heavenly stems, and they relate to the 5 phases. This is what everybody knows: wood, fire, earth, metal, water. The heavenly stems describe nature and people on earth. And that's all. It's not something you can see in the sky. It's not a material thing. This is made, this chart, by Chinese who understood and described what they saw and perceived and observed, and they put it in a kind of schedule. And that's the background of for instance, the phase wood with gallbladder and liver are the heavenly stems Jia and Yi. And so the background of the small intestine and heart is Bing and Ding. And so the background of the 5 phases, this is, you could say, the 5 phases is the materialized energy or qi in the body, in nature, wherever you can think of. But the background is the subtle energies behind it are the heavenly stems. Now, I put here big four, and I just say it once, but maybe I will say it twice. One of the core rules of stems and branches acupuncture, and that's important for the rest of the lecture, is that when someone is born in a year ending with a 4, like 54 or 44 or 34, we don't use that energy, like we don't use the gallbladder energy. And when you are born in a year ending with a 5, you don't use the liver energy, but you will use a partner. Like you see here, the gallbladder is related to Jia, and I don't know if you can see it on my slide, you can't see it, but on top you see there's the great movement earth, as we call it. Maybe I change it for myself. Here you see the great movement earth. There's not a great movement earth here. They are different in quality. This is more yang, this is more yin. So with people born in a year gallbladder in earth, as we call it, we use spleen points, not gallbladder points. And that's for all the people born in a year ending with a 4. This year is not from the 1st of January to the end of January, so the end of December. The year starts around Chinese New Year. Some people say the 20th of January, some people say the 5th of February, and it runs to the next year, Chinese New Year, or 20th of January or 5th of February, depends on your teacher. So that is a rule we need to remember. Now, here you see again the great movements and the related heavenly stems. They have names, Jia, Yi, Bing, Ding, and so on. For people who studied with me, they know these names. We never studied this before. This is a bit awkward, maybe. But these are the heavenly stems. And this combination of earth and Jia gives the gallbladder. The combination of metal and Yi gives the liver. Yeah. That's very unusual that metal is important for liver, that earth is important for gallbladder. But in heavenly stems and great movement, that is quite normal. And we'll see how we can treat with that. Now, heavenly stems is something which comes from heaven, you could say, and infuses the world we live in. And the heavenly emperor lived, according to the story, lived on the North Pole Star, and the earthly emperor in China was the ambassador of the heavenly emperor. And when he died, he could go back to the heavenly emperor. In the body, that earthly emperor is the heart Shen. In the country, it is the real emperor. But in the body, which is similar, has a subtle origin in heaven. We will see that in a minute. But the physical manifestation of it is the ambassador of that subtle origin, and that is within the heart and is the heart Shen. That's one relationship. Another relationship is that this great movement earth has the same quality. It is the landing area of the light of heaven, and it creates a heavenly mandate to live with. From that great movement earth, we see the 4 other phases, great movement phases, develop. So here we go from the great movement earth to metal, water, wood, and fire. So it comes down to the landing area of the great movement earth. So the great movement earth is the central position, but it needs always the energy of the heart. When the heart is insufficient, when the heart Shen is insufficient, it doesn't feed the great movement earth. So it's very important to see that relationship and to know that. So that great movement earth, which is the central area of the heavenly mandate where it starts, it's a vital center, and it processes everything around it. like I say here, that harmonizes, integrates, fertilizes, and transforms the cycle of seasons, and as well the developmental stages in the body and the psyche. So every development in your soul, every development in the body starts with the great movement earth. If the great movement earth is not balanced, it definitely needs treatment. So it's very, very authentic. It's very you. It's very, some people say it's the ego. I think it is the ego and your identity. We'll discuss the difference later. Yeah. So that great movement earth tells you, who are you? What are you in life? How do you relate to your society? How do you relate to yourself? How do you relate to your vertical axis? Can you act from your authenticity, or can't you? Are you mostly in relationship with other people through the horizontal level? So that's the great movement earth and the importance of it, and the heart chi, which is very important. Now, again, to the horizontal level. The horizontal level is what we're in, the world as we see it, as we can perceive it, concrete, the everyday life. Everything with your thought, with your emotions, and everything you do is on the horizontal level. We meet each other, react mostly on the horizontal level. But what is the vertical axis? Now, when we go back to the famous chapter 8 from the Ling Shu, there it says, when heaven abides, there is virtue. And when earth abides, there is chi. And virtue, when it flows down and it meets the blended chi, there is life. And when two jing, female, male jing, meet, that indicates shen. So there is virtue, there is blended chi, it comes together with conception, and then there is shen. So it means that we, in ourselves, we have virtue, which is heavenly. We have earth chi, which is also jing. And when they meet, there is shen. So life in ourselves is the vertical axis, is how virtue and chi meet each other in ourselves, creating a shen. Do we act according to that vertical axis? That's most important, because what we will see is that trauma will disrupt the horizontal level, but it has great influence on, or bad influence, or disintegrated influence on the vertical axis. We are not connected anymore to that vertical axis. So first of all, when you really can be yourself, then probably you have integrated your traumas. But how do you know that you are yourself? The difference between development on the horizontal level is that we get the education from the outside world by thought, knowledge, all the things you hear now from me, that's on the horizontal level. And that's why I ask you, go with me with this flow of understanding, because the vertical axis education is through yourself, through self-knowledge, through integrating what you hear, and don't stick with the knowledge, but what does it mean to you? What do you do with it? How does it land in you? How does it land into your great movement earth? And from that, you can erect yourself, instead of that you copy other people, or you copy teachers, or you copy books, or copy any, that's not yourself. So when you erect yourself, that is the vertical axis. Then there is an entrance to be yourself. Now, there are a lot of difference in trauma treatment. And for myself, I usually do that. Is that on the horizontal level or the vertical level? And a lot of treatments are on the horizontal level, like behavior therapy is very much on the horizontal level. Treatments related to concept and knowledge is on the horizontal level. But really understanding the vertical axis from inside, that needs something else. And a lot of trauma treatment nowadays, luckily enough, are more on that level as well. Now, this is a schedule I made myself. It's not from someone else. It looks a little bit like Maslow, but it's a little bit different. first of all, the identity of a person, which is related to the Great Movement Earth, that is the ability, the awareness that you can look into yourself and you can look into the world. So it's that movement. Who am I? What can I do with the world? What do I want? What is my place in this society, and so on. And it's a little bit different from the ego, because the ego has that same thing, but also has a relationship, what is called the true self or authentic self. And I actually don't like that so much, these words, because if there is a true self, then an authentic self, there's still division. And being authentic or being yourself, there is no division. There's integrity, you could say. It is all together. So I use the word true self and authentic self, but actually I would like to describe it as something which is the foundation we all stand on, which colors or changes the atmosphere of yourself. But we all stand on that same source, on that same energy, which you can call love, compassion, or anything you can think of. But the personal self, the ego, has that relationship deep down into yourself through the heart-kidney axis or heaven-earth axis. Now, it goes through this non-self part, and it goes to the self part. So it takes the personal self, the non-self, and that can disturb you, because within this field, there can be a trauma, something you don't want, something you don't like, you're shocked, you're completely frozen, or anything like that. That changes your safety. And then you want to escape from that. And as long as that is minor, then you still have this contact to your authentic self or to your compassion, to your origin of love. But when the survival or the escape route becomes too big, too large, it becomes more and more difficult to contact that. And then you're stuck within your horizontal level. And it's very difficult to make that vertical relationship. So the authentic self, or this area we all stand on, has no specific place. It's something which you know is your truth. Everybody has his own area where you can feel this is right to me, this is true to me. And it's not only to me, but this is true. Here again, we have the 5 great movements: earth, metal, water, wood, fire, and it repeats. Here you see the numbers of the heavenly stems, and you will see that, for instance, the earth great movement has number 1 and number 6, and here the metal 2 and 7, and so on. So it has an odd number and an even number. The odd numbers are yang, the even numbers are yin. So when you are born in a year with, for instance, Jia, which evolves in gallbladder in earth, as we call it, we don't treat that, but we treat the partner, which is the yin part, which is spleen in earth. And similar to Yi, liver in metal, we don't treat when you are born with that, but we treat large intestine in metal. This concept is a heavenly concept. So it is from a subtle area, infusing nature, infusing the human beings, and we answer as human beings back to heaven. That is the earthly branches, the answer back. That's a channel system. But this, you could say it comes from above, but it's around us. It's everywhere. It is in nature. So these kind of energies which create development and change and transformation is everywhere. So we see within the fire yang and yin, earth, yang and yin, and so on. Now, that leads to this picture, which we'll discuss later as well, is that you see that the gallbladder and spleen are together within the great movement earth. The liver and large intestine are together in the great movement metal. Lung and small intestine are together in the great movement water. These three great movements we'll talk about today, probably not about these, because these three great movements are very important to prepare a person to be able to process trauma. And this seems maybe awkward for the people who never studied stems and branches, because gallbladder in earth and spleen, yeah, we know spleen is in earth, and liver in metal, and lung in water, and small intestine in water. But on a subtle level, they have that relationship. Now, these are the 5 Shen, and they're very much related to the great movements. These also are aspects, subtle aspects within our body, which are around us, within us, which have the same kind of quality as the great movements. So when we talk about the great movement earth, we also talk about the spiritual source, Yi. And when we talk about the great movement wood, we talk about the Hun. And when we talk about the great movement metal, we also talk about Po. Now, let's first talk about Shen, because Shen is important. As I said, the heart Shen, when the heart Shen is out of balance, it doesn't support the great movement earth. It's very important that the heart Shen is balanced as it is. It is the everlasting inspiration on man, in man, within man. And there's an original Shen before you are born. That's called Yuan Shen. And when you are born, then there is the Shen residing in the heart, which also expresses itself in the Hun, the Yi, the Po, and the Zi. The Yuan Shen is the most original, subtle energy of our human being. And most people's teach that it resides in the heart, and it does. It does reside in the heart. But it penetrates into the Jing as well. That Yuan Shen, that principle of Tao, or universal spark, as Dr. van Buren called it, that goes to the Jing. And as I said, the virtue comes from heaven and meets the blended Qi of earth. And then when two Jing combine, there is Shen. And so within that Jing, there is love, which is expressed through the heart, through the Wu Shen. That energy of love, that energy of Shen, is expressed in the way we communicate with the world. How we receive things, how we think, how we act, what I say, how we reach out to the world. That is through the heart. But the love, the original love of the universal spark, of the beginning of life, resides in the water. And that is expressed by the heart. So that is this Shen Jing, which is together, which we take apart. And when there is a trauma, that integration of Shen and Jing is disrupted. So the vertical axis, some people call it consciousness or self-consciousness. Well, what's in a name? But that vertical axis of Shen, heart, Zi, kidney, Jing, and Yi, spleen, or you could say the great movement fire, the great movement earth, the great movement water. That's the vertical axis. And so that's the area which we need to focus on. Now, another similar energy are the 5 virtues. The 5 virtues, they act upon the 5 phases. Like kindness or humanness or benevolence, that is very much related to the great movement earth. Integrity is very much related to your identity. When integrity grows, your identity becomes more stable. When trust grows, the great movement metal, and we will see what it means later, will grow as well. So we will see these virtues later during this seminar. So please keep them in your mind. Now, when we want to escape because there is an act of disrespect, or there's violence, or there is something we are really scared of, we have certain reactions, but they belong to these virtues. Order and virtue helps us with our social engagement. So we want to, when we are afraid, we faint from social engagement, we disconnect there. Yeah. When there is kindness, or there is no kindness, there is no humanness, no benevolence, then there is movement, and then we react with our wood and we fight. And when we look to the metal, this is trust. But if there's no trust, there's disrespect in trust, we want to protect ourselves, and we fight or we flight. And when we look to wisdom, whatever that is, but something which is inside you, your truth, your knowledge, not your knowledge, you know that this is the right thing to do. If that is disturbed, there's no love, then we flight and freeze. And as I said, if safety is disrupted, and that's with all these four we discussed before now, there's a possibility to disconnect or even dissociate. Now, this is the answer I was talking about. So if there's a trauma, if there's suffering, there is a possible answer. And we will mostly look at the earth, the metal, and the water. These two, that may be later, but not for now. First of all, if the identity is disrupted, we need to reconnect to ourselves. If you can't find your own integrity anymore, if you can't find your own safety anymore, then you need to find your own identity again. You feel, who am I in this world? What do I mean? What do I want in this world? And what kind of position do I have in society, etc., etc. The metal part, which has to do with, maybe you remember that, with trust, is also the trust in other people. The interconnection we have with other people, not only with other people, but also with yourself, with your identity and your ego, and hopefully with that, let's call it true self. And only if these two is taken care of, you can come to an integration again. And an integration means that the trauma is integrated into your being. Because the trauma is something which is, let's say it's cold and it's put in a fridge or in a room and it's there, and somewhere in your being there is this trauma and you don't look at it. And so it's a separate part. Or a trauma leads to fragmentation of lots of energies. And if it is fragmented, you can't integrate it anymore. It's everywhere. And so when your integrity is growing and your identity is more stable and you're more connected to the world and more connected to yourself, then there is a possibility to have more integration of that trauma. So you can't change the trauma, but the effects from the trauma, definitely you can integrate into your being, that it is part of who you are. And from there is a possibility to growth. These are aspects when your ego is kind of free. not really free, but it's not troubling you so much. And it works also the other way around. If you're able to work on these qualities inside yourself, which has to do again with the great movement earth, the great movement metal, the great movement water, with Yi, Po, and Ze, and so on. If you train this yourself, it stabilizes the qualities of that great movement. Attentive awareness is a quality where you are without judgment. You can listen to my story here and being attentive aware. You can also be here, what is he talking about? Or this is too difficult, or oh, this is interesting, let's do more. All these things have this kind of judgment in them, positive or negative, it doesn't matter. But attentive awareness is really being here in the now without any judgment. Then in development, the great movement metal has to do with introspection. And maybe you remember when we go back, you saw here protection. So you protect against the world. But the real protection is that you go inside and see what does the world to me and how can I change that? How can I work with it? How can I live with that? How should I do this? And from this balance, there's a possibility to acceptance, but even more so to reconciliation, because I think reconciliation is a real possibility. Then there is a real possibility for integration. In acceptance, there is still a kind of distance. And with reconciliation, there is really coming togetherness. And in the great movement wood, the growth aspect is that it's not only adaptation, but you create something new from that. The way, like if somebody is very angry all the time, and he can change that in doing sports on a very high level for him or her, that is a sublimation. And that also can happen with other aspects. And with the fire, the great movement fire has to do with intuition. And intuition is something which doesn't come from thought. It is just there. And suddenly you know. It doesn't come from reading books. It is just there suddenly. That is the great movement fire. That you can't train so much, but you can be open to it. But it all starts with this attentive awareness. If you can really train this attentive awareness, it's a kind of mindfulness, you could say, but it is really without any judgment. When you scan your body, don't judge it. Just feel it, be there. And we'll see that the body is very important. Now, how do we actually grow our psyche, our soul, our being? And I put down here insight, perception, evolution. But probably there are more, but for this talk, I think these three are very important to understand them. Before I continue, this part, are there any questions about this part? Because it's quite important to, if there are questions about this part of great movement and heavenly stems, then it's better to answer these questions. Are there any questions, Sahaya, or not?
Nothing's in the chat unless someone brings one in now or opens their mic. I think one's sort of coming through from Tamra.
Yeah. I only see can reconciliation, but what it can, I don't know. Occur through one party to the trauma. The answer is yes. Yes, reconciliation is a process which is within yourself. And of course, the trauma can still exist, but reconciliation is something which is deep down in the water and has to do with that connection to what we call the true self, because in the true self, there is the foundation of compassion, which is love. And reconciliation is an expression of love, which has nothing to do with, love is always there. So there is no division anymore. So as long as you focus on the person who gave you the trauma, then there is no possibility for reconciliation, because then you're still in division. But the moment you feel the love inside you, it doesn't mean that you love the other person, but then the trauma is still there, but it is less prominent and you can be more in the present. Okay, I think we go on then. So the growth through insight, perception, and evolution. The hang on. The undivided Shen, as we discussed it, yeah. For some reason, I see something not straight, so I want to see it. I'll do it like this because I can read it myself now. The undivided Yuan Shen is not related to time. The moment we are born, there's time. Before that, there is no perception of time. There is space. And space is not the space between me and my computer, or between you and your desk, or you and your computer. That's not the space I meant. Space is something which is beyond that. There is no time, that's space. So there is no perception, there are no senses. And that growth goes through insight, not through knowledge. You can read books and you have no insight at all. You can go to a master and you have no insight at all. Insight is at a certain moment that you suddenly say, this is what it is. That's insight. And where it comes from, maybe intuition, maybe something, but that is part of the undivided Yuan Shen, that there's insight, and that can lead to growth. Suddenly you see, this is what I do with my mother or my father or my brother, and this is how I act or react. And suddenly you see the whole concept, not just part of it, you see everything. This is how it is, and that's insight. That's part of the Yuan Shen. But that's not so much a part of the psychological concept. Now, before we go into that, we need to discuss this part. That's also from the famous chapter 8 of the Ling Shu. Yeah, when the heart reaches out, applies itself, then we speak of Yi, and that often is translated as intent, intention, which I think is actually wrong. Intention means that you want something already with it, and that's not intent, or is not Yi. So I don't have another word, therefore I use the word Yi or Yi. But when you look at the character, this part of the character is the heart, and this top part of the character is a musical tone, a vibration. So it vibrates the heart by itself, not by your knowledge, not by your desires. The real pure Yi is the heart expresses itself. So when the heart applies itself, we speak of Yi. That's what it does. And when that becomes permanent, that is Zi. And Zi is here, you see the same aspect, the same character of heart. And here you see a very straight phallus kind of symbol, which is erect, it's strong. So that is the heart expresses itself in a certain direction. But when the ego or the identity comes in between, then Yi becomes intent and will becomes desire. But originally it says there's virtue, there's a blended Qi coming together, then there's the two Jing coming together, there's there's Shen, and from that Shen you get intent or Yi, and Zi, will. But we actually interfere. When the persevering will changes, we speak of thought. And this is a very important thing, because thought derives from Zi, and it depends on, is your ego interfering with the heart, that the heart can't express itself as it is through intuition or through connection or feelings, but through your desires, that will command the chi to do different and will command your thought. So your thoughts maybe are all in the stomach spleen area or the great movement earth area or the earth area itself, but it actually derives from how we deal with will. Yeah, how do we deal with the heart? Are we interfering or not? Now, going back to this picture, I'm not going to talk about these trigrams now, but this is from another lecture. You see that in the duality, in the idea of thought, in thought there's always memory, there's always the past, there's always the future, and there's the present, but there's always the vision. In that idea of duality, and that's also the I am principle. The I am principle is a principle of duality because it's me and you, and we can be together, but we is still you and me. There's always duality. In the undivided you and Shen, that's not the case. But in our psyche, there is duality. And that leads to that our growth goes through thought, through perception internally, who am I, what I'm feeling, etc. And how do I perceive the world, and how does the world perceive me? That is more an aspect of the Wu Shen, the 5 Shen, and of Ling. Ling is the yin manifestation of Shen. And Ling is with red and yellow and blue because Ling is related to heaven as the spirit, is related to Jing, how it manifests itself, and is related to earth. And Ling is, maybe you remember what I said about the Yi, it has the heart as foundation, and how the heart expresses itself. That is Ling. And in treatment, if people lose their listening to the heart, but only listening to the trauma or listening to other people, but don't listen to their own hearts anymore, I often use points like Heart 4 or Kidney 24. That really brings people back to themselves. Both have, if you see the name of these points, it is the path of the Shen or the empty Shen, you could say. And that leads to more peacefulness and the possibility to listen to the heart. And that, as you have seen, can lead to that thought is not so interfering and perception is not so interfering. So when you do this like Heart 4 and Kidney 24, it means that you leave the people alone. You stay in the room, but you leave them for at least for 10 minutes, you leave them alone. But trauma therapy is very often on this level, and it often starts at a certain moment with one of these points. Now, the more physical, observable Jing, we develop through evolution. I'm not going to talk about it so much now, but evolution has to do also with ancestral trauma, with collective trauma. It has also to do with within our life. Also, we have different lives in one life. I am now, as a 72-year-old man, I'm not the same as when I was 10 or 40 or 30. I was different then, a different person, you could say. Of course, I'm still Johan, but the way I look at it, the initiative I took, etc., they are very different. And the way I connect to the world is different. That also grows through evolution of Yu Jing, as you have seen in the first chapter of the Neijing, of the Suen. You see all these phases of the kidney energy and the Jing energy. And when you read this very precisely, you see that it is not only related to the physical changes in your body, but definitely also to your psychological changes. Now, there is something in this picture, and I take out the Yuan Shen now, which is very important. That is when there is when something happens. I try to show that to you. So when something happens like this, suddenly I come very close and I look at you, or I go very distant. That leads to a certain sensation inside you. Yeah, that sensation is very important because that is the sensation comes from the Po. It is your instinctive reaction to something unexpected. That sensation is there. And you can be happy, you can be in awe, you can be angry, you can be fearful, anything what can happen. But before it goes to the level of the Tzu, of what are you going to do with it, there is already sensation. That is very important to understand, that physical sensation. You can place that inside yourself. You can feel that sensation. So when it came very close, you maybe felt something in your stomach, maybe felt something in your heart, or your breathing changed, or maybe nothing happened. That's also possible. But probably you understand that when something happens unexpectedly, definitely, there is a sensation, a feeling. And from that feeling, there is a movement, a reaction. Now, looking at this picture again, so, and this is one of the most important pictures of this webinar, is that when there is disrespect, there's mistrust, there is cruelty, there is abuse, there is carelessness or something disorders, there is that sensation, physical sensation. And then it goes to the Tzu. And as I said, the Tzu leads to thoughts and it leads to reactions. So people can fight, flight, freeze, faint, etc. They can feel sad, they can be angry, they can dissociate, anything. There is a reaction to it. When something suddenly happens, there is a car accident, and you stand still, and the only thing you can do is just watch it. And other people just wake up and they start to organize things, and they call the ambulance and they do things. And so everybody reacts differently when there is a trauma. And in clinic, I've seen that many people treat that reaction, but actually that is a survival reaction. And to treat that is not always the first thing you should think of. A survival reaction, let's say this happens in your youth. There was cruelty from your father and there was a trauma. You can think of many things. That trauma, that sensation you felt then is still there, is still living, is still in your being now. Let's say that 5-year-old Johan who was hit by his father, which he didn't, but he was cruel, that feeling was still there. How did I react at that moment? Maybe I froze, maybe I fought back, maybe I flew away, maybe I felt just anxiety. My answer to that could be anger, could be confusion, could be a physical arousal. That's what you still will see when somebody is, for instance, dominating me in that way. Then I can feel that still 5-year-old Johan can react with that same kind of energy. Now, I could be a very angry person maybe, then later in life. And so when I come to an acupuncturist or a psychologist or somatic experience therapist or whatever, and they want to treat the anger, they want to know what is beyond that. So then you go back to that sensation. When was the first time you felt that? So when for instance, I'm very angry and I sit like this all the time and I'm a lot of tension, then you can really ask the person, do that again. And when was the first time that you felt that? And then maybe you say, when I was 5 years old, when my father hit me. How did you feel that? What did you feel that? And then it's very possible that you feel powerless or shame or sadness or guilt or anything like that. That is the energy you need to treat. Then you need to know, how do I treat powerlessness? How do I treat shame, etc., etc. And you don't treat on the reaction. You don't treat the thought model, but you treat, and so you have to go back to that first sensation where it started, which is still a living entity. Now, trauma, an individual trauma, not a collective trauma or ancestral trauma, is different. But in an individual trauma, there's an overload of input for you. And it can lead to numbness, cold energy. And you feel that in the pulse, in the depth of the pulse, you find a very tight pulse, very thin, tight pulse. So you can feel, for instance, let's say heart or liver or whatever you can think of. And then when you go to the depth, you find a very tight, cold energy. It also can lead to fragmentation. That leaves a scattered pulse, often in the heart. Yeah. And not only in the heart, but mostly in the heart. Yeah. When there's stress, where still constant stress, you find vibration and often access, but a lot of vibration on the surface of the pulse. In the yang area, you find a lot of vibration. But most important is that most of the traumas I've seen lead to this kind of cold, numb kind of energy which you can't touch anymore. It's there in the fridge, in a room. And you can go to that room, but it doesn't help. Maybe you can dip into that trauma, dip into that feeling, but not too long. First, you need to know, where is the reaction? What is reaction on horizontal axis, or the horizontal level should be, not axis. Reaction on the horizontal level. That could be, for instance, anger. That could be dissociation. That could be fright. That could be whatever you can think of. But then you have to go back to, where did that instinct of escape started? Then that escape at that moment of trauma was very sensible. Yeah, when my father would hit me, and maybe I block myself and I feel very lonely and I feel completely disconnected, that was for me at that moment maybe the best answer. Or I maybe became angry and I started to hit him. That was my best answer. Or I started to bully my brother or sister. That was my best answer. But when you can't go away from that, it's still living in the now, in the present moment. That's not the best answer. And you can only change that when you see that this action of escape disintegrated the Jing Shen, the vertical axis, on the long run, because I'm not connected to myself anymore. I'm not connected to the true self. There is a barrier between me here, myself in the world, and this self here. It goes through a little gate, you could say, which is your social environment. But most of all, everything is kind of blocked, that you can't reach anymore to the Jing Shen vertical axis combination. Yeah, so you stay within yourself, or you stay within your social environment. It has effect on your personal self, on your social behavior, and you can live with that maybe, but you're not connected through your vertical axis to the origin of your being. Now, then we need to know the integrated Jing Shen. What is that? What does it mean? It means that in your patient, you see resilience. People have a good weiqi, not overexcited. It just is good resilience. There is this love for life. There is vitality. If these three things are there, then you can speak of an integrated Jing Shen. Yeah? People are authentic. People feel balanced. That's an integrated Jing Shen. Maybe you don't agree with their way of life. That's very possible, but their Jing Shen is still integrated. It means that there is a balance between how they deal with themselves and the society, but also how they deal with their own energy. So they fit and adapted in their society, but they feel also free to act and free to be themselves. And then the Great Movement Earth is kind of balanced. If the Jing Shen is not integrated, then definitely you start to balance the Great Movement Earth. Now, individual trauma, here you see this sign for cold, and here you see this sign for fragmentation. It always goes together with reduced integrated Jing Shen, vertical axis. Yeah. So you see lack of resilience. You see that people are tired. You see that they don't want to live anymore, or they don't feel to enjoy themselves. They're not depressive, or depressed, but there's nothing they want to. They can be depressed, but it doesn't have to be. So their vitality is very low. And it leads to that people get ill easily, because if there is no resilience, your weight sheet becomes lower and you easily get ill. And so there's less adaptation, there's no sublimation, there's less plasticity, as they call it here. Yeah? So the experience from that trauma, they are bothering them here in the here and the now, in the present, and in the idea of how the future will develop. So it's not integrated. The Jing Shen is not integrated, but they are also not integrated. These people are not integrated in the present moment. So when you start integrating, and we will discuss that, how to come to that action, healing means integration, creates a certain presence in the present. And eventually that leads to growth. That is what I meant. What is your answer to suffering? The answer to suffering is, can I integrate it? Can I integrate it? Because it happened to you and you can fight it all the time. But what is the way to do that? And of course, I think it's very important, especially with more severe trauma, not only to do it with acupuncture, but also to go to a counselor and to work with that, to somatic experience practitioner, or to really work people who work with trauma all the time. That's very important. And acupuncture can be really well to use that in this process. Now, I think this is also a very important one. Trauma, but also the appeal of society, makes you go away from your inner being. So being able to place the trauma in the past without confusing the identity or the ego in this present moment makes one's attention focus more on the current environment and current state of the self. Attentive awareness. Great Movement Earth. The path to finding one's own authenticity, you find your traumas, you find your fears, you are confronted with it. And that's not what we want. But really, if you want to focus on who am I really, then you will confront, or you will encounter your traumas and have to work with that. Yeah? Through time, care, vulnerability, sensitivity, openness, and love, instead of conflict, the ego learns to recognize the actual world and the people in it. It means that the more we think of, I am this, I want that, I desire this, the more conflict there is, the more division there is, the more difficult it is to process your trauma. The more you focus on this is who I am and this is what I want, the more difficult it becomes. So here you find some symptoms that hinder, some symptoms of individual trauma that hinder integration. I'm not going to discuss them all, you can see them. But the road to integration, here, trauma counselor, explanation, I think it's most important to explain what happens and what happened to people. Explanation really makes people part of the process instead of being away from the process. Yeah, constitutional acupuncture, that I don't discuss now, but that's definitely a good system to treat trauma. Maturity and ripeness. It means that as a practitioner, as I said, when you do a heart 4, for instance, to bring people back to themselves, or kidney 24, to really open up to the self, you can't just do it because I say so. You need to know and feel what is the right moment to do that. And then it works. It doesn't work because I tell you that it works, but it works when you see that there is a slight opening that they want to listen to themselves. Then these points work very well. Treat symptoms, of course, that's possible. Trauma counsel, I discussed. Facilitate integration, we will discuss a bit later. So individual trauma with constitutional acupuncture, not as treating individual people, but finding the general concept behind it, is that through the heavenly stems we discussed in the first 3 ones, the first 3 great movements, we can create safety, internal and external. First of all, we work on the identity, the ego, the self. I don't know how you want to use it. We work on the interconnectedness between you and your society, and only then you can work on integration. Now, this is the picture again, and hopefully you can just have it with you that I don't have to go back to this all the time. So when you look at this, here you see the great movements and the related organs: GIA, gallbladder in earth, liver in metal, small intestine in water, spleen in earth, large intestine in metal, lung in water. These 3 are most important. Now, this is also a bigger picture. You find here the bold ones. The gallbladder in earth, that gives you your own identity, your own self, your personal self. Liver in metal gives you interaction. Small intestine in water, fire, water, that leads to integration. If you look at spleen in earth, and we will discuss these pictures later, when you look at spleen in earth, you find your integrity, your intellect. That goes together with the identity. Identity and integrity are very close together. If the integrity goes, your identity becomes more stable. If your identity becomes more stable, your integrity grows. Yeah? Large intestine in metal leads to introspection. The world and me. How do I protect myself? How is my self-knowledge? How do I cultivate myself? Introspection and interaction go together. If there's good interaction and no introspection, then the great movement metal is not in balance. If there's a lot of introspection, but you can't interact with people, there's no balance in the great movement metal. And lung and water is your intuition, but not the intuition from the fire, but the intuition from the authentic love, the authentic water. The love resides in the water. And again, integration without reconciliation, without love, and that kind of intuition is not possible. So when we look to the first one, gallbladder in earth, you see there is wood and there's earth. Liver in metal, you find there is the horizontal level. Liver, wood, metal, great movement. So there is this horizontal plane. Now the first 2 great movements create this horizontal plane, which we live on. Then we have small intestine in water, fire and water. And then you see that this wheel of life is created. This is the basis. From this, we can live our life. If this doesn't exist, if the Jing Shen is disrupted, fire, water, there is no integration possible. Now, when you continue with it, you have heart in wood, stomach and fire. I'm not going to discuss that. But then you get spleen in earth. It's all earth. It's all in the earth. The central being, integrity. You become whole. You become yourself. And then the next one is large intestine in metal. Again, that's just metal. That is, you're able to perceive the world and see what it does to yourself. And then the last of the three is lung and water, which is metal and water. It brings you to your origin. It brings you to the love inside yourself. Now, there are many ways, and just these are a few, to treat the vertical axis. And you can read them and probably already have read them. And I'm not going to discuss these, but I want to discuss how to treat the vertical axis. How do we do that? What are the treatment options for everyone, not only individual, but when people come to you and you see that that vertical axis, that Jing axis is not integrated, is disintegrated, is no vitality, no resilience, etc., then it's definitely possible to treat this. Then you can treat the gallbladder, Jia gallbladder, this one, and spleen, earth. And we will discuss the points later. Yeah, we come to that. So then you work on the identity, that they feel safe within themselves, that they feel the integrity of themselves, that they're not disconnected anymore, that they have the possibility to not disconnect. With liver and large intestine in metal, that's the horizontal axis, as you maybe remember that. That is the interconnectedness between you and the world and yourself. And only then it's possible to go to small intestine in water, spleen in earth, and kidney in fire. And kidney fire we don't discuss here now, but we definitely will talk about spleen in water. And of course, when you talk about, small intestine in water, you also talk about lung in water. The integration comes from small intestine in water and lung in water. Now, this is a picture I've seen before. This odd relationship between spleen and gallbladder in earth and liver, large intestine, metal, lung and small intestine in water. These are called unlike sheep. And again, when you are born, for instance, with gallbladder in earth, you don't treat the gallbladder, but definitely only the spleen. If you're not born with gallbladder in earth or spleen in earth, then you can treat them both. You can choose points related to that. Now you see here, these are earth related. The next one is metal related. The next one is water related, and so on. Now, these are called stem points, not from the classics, not from the classics. This is something, the names is invented by people who taught stems and branches, among them I am, but also another person, and I discussed that also with Dr. van Buren. So these are points where you can't find in the classics, but when you look at them, it's like gallbladder 34 is the earth point. Spleen 3 is the earth point. So it is the earth point on that channel which relates to that great movement. Spleen, gallbladder. You find here gallbladder 34, spleen 3. These are metal points. These are water points. These are wood points. These are fire points. On that organ related to that great movement. That's why we call it stem points, heavenly stem points. The heavenly stem points are related to that great movement. The heavenly stem Jia, that evolves into the gallbladder, is related to the great movement Earth. So gallbladder 34 is the stem point. Spleen 3 is the stem point. Colon 1 or large intestine 1, liver 4 are stem points. And we will discuss especially these stem points, because these are important for identity, interconnectedness, and integration. Now, this was the landing area, remember? Identity, integrity, intellect. The great movement earth is the landing area of the light of heavenly, and it gives you the possibility for an heavenly mandate. We have seen this, we have discussed this, and I put it here again because to remind you that when the heart chi is insufficient or fragmented or excess or anything you can think of, you need to treat that first. Otherwise, this won't work at all. Now here you see gallbladder 34, which is related to Yi. Remember, Yi, listening, the vibration of the heart, great movement earth, vibration of the heart, integrity. Gallbladder 34 gives movement and intent of the heart. So gallbladder 34 helps you to listen to the heart. Of course, the heart needs to be healthy, but it listens to the heart. So when it listens to the heart, it gives you direction, it gives you focus, it gives you development of identity. And very often in people who are traumatized, they lost their feeling of identity. Who am I in this relationship? What can I do in my work? Who am I in my family, etc., etc. It's close. You can't do that every time, but regularly using gallbladder 34 gives them more trust in their own identity. Now, you know that gallbladder 34, as it's written here, maybe you have learned that in your acupuncture education, it moistens all tendons and muscles, and it helps to move freely, because when your muscles move as they should do, when there's enough fluid in them, that you can feel free. Yeah. And what I've seen is that when you do gallbladder 34, and maybe together with spleen 3, which is the other great movement point or stem point, it gives the idea of something new. I am, and there's expectance for the future. And so it really vitalizes, but it brings people also to themselves. Yeah. So when you're completely stiff, you can't move anymore. When a traumatized person feels like locked in himself, this point really can open them up, that they can see the world in a different perspective. So you do this when people really have identity issues, but you don't do it only for the identity issue, but you want them to face the world. They make the right choices for themselves. So when you lost your direction in life because of relationship problems, or that you sacked, or anything, you can't work anymore because you're injured and you don't know what to do. Who am I? What am I doing? Then gallbladder 34 is a very good point to bring them to themselves. But the next step is the interconnectedness to the world and to yourself. It doesn't stop here. Yeah, so it's the beginning of a treatment process. So when you add spleen 3, you remember there was the only earth aspect. It's great movement earth, and spleen is earth, so everything is earth. It really brings people to themselves. And Dr. Van Buren usually added small intestine 4 with that, which I do as well, which brings much more peace and stability then. And it's much easier to take decisions. And it really gives confidence. And people sometimes came into my clinic, they really were kind of lost inside themselves. And when you do this treatment and keep them quiet for 10 minutes, and then maybe you can talk a bit, that really brings them back to themselves. And it opens your chest, it opens the small intestine 4, it really allows the heart to reconnect with the great movement earth. So these things I already have said as far as I can see. Yeah, the pulse, you see often that there's fullness of chi superficially. And that means there is a kind of resistance against the external world. Yeah, you don't know how to deal with it. Yeah, then gallbladder 34 calms that down. Spleen 3, that is only earth, as you see here in the left corner. Yeah, the great movement and the the heavenly stem are related to earth. So everything is earth. Yeah. So Taiba is supreme white. That gives solidity. But from that solidity, you want to serve, you want to shape something new from integrity and your intellect. But again, the intent is not your intention, but it is what is heard in the heart. So it means that there should be the possibility to look inside. That is related to metal, as you remember. Great movement metal has to do with protection, but also with self-learning, self-processing, self-cultivation. It leads to individualization, to be yourself. But spleen 3 with gallbladder 34, small intestine 4, forms the foundation of this process. So the attunement to the inner being is only possible when that identity becomes calm, balanced, accepted, and solid. So often in traumatized people, spleen 3 is possible because they come to you with, not with the trauma, but they come to you with spine issues or back issues or joint issues in the body. Yeah. And then when you see that and you see a reduced vitality and you see, well, what I said about the disintegration of Jing Shen, then you know there was a trauma in the past. Yeah. So then you need to find a certain entrance to talk about it, and then think about this sensation. What is most important? That sensation. Yeah. That I've seen it many times in clinic that people come to me with back pain and they are very angry, for instance. And I ask them, when was the first time you were so angry? And then they come up with, when I was 6 years old and I was bullied by my whatever. And then you can ask, how did you feel? I was angry. Now, how did you feel? I felt humiliated. I felt insecure. I felt shame. That is the origin. And from there, you start to treat according to your technique. It could be stems and branches, TCM, Japanese, anything. But that often goes together with back pain. And then you know they are damaged in their identity. So this point is very important to processing memory. So when you start with processing trauma, you need to do spleen 3, because if you were able to process the problems, you wouldn't be with the acupuncturist. You need that energy to process the problems. Yeah. Besides that, the spleen 3 also, and that's not often said, but it really creates more Wei Qi, more resilience. And that has to do with that center, the integrity of your being. The integrity is complete. You become whole. And from that wholeness, there is more entrance to Wei Qi and to organize your Qi system. The great movement metal, very important. You see here wood and metal, horizontal field. Has to do with interaction and introspection. Is one of the most important great movements to work on in any trauma. There is always a, well, it says in the third bullet point, the vitality of duality is best reflected in the way they communicate within the field they evoke, taking into account that the interaction and communication is never stable, but flows in tides of intensity. When you are with your patient, when the patient is with his partner or her partner, or when in any communication is related to the great movement metal. If we shake hands or we say hello, the way we do that is an expression of the great movement metal. Yeah. So that dynamic duality, as I called it, is you can't work with people without working on the great movement metal. You need to include that. and it is related to the Po. Now, the Po are often described as some nasty things, but without the Po, we wouldn't be here. It gives us a physical body, and they are very much needed in processing trauma and transforming fears into an integrated Jing Shen. So these 7 Po actually are at service of ourselves, for all human beings. It's very important to have these 7 Po, but they can also be in the way, both. Now, Kimberly, can you mute your microphone, please? The 7 openings in the head are also related to the 7 Po. So the 7 emotions are related to the 7 Po. So what I said about this sensation you have when something happens, this feeling you have when something happens, that is part of the Po. That Po is instinct. That reacts again when you feel that again. That immediately reacts again. I will tell you a little story. Once I had a severe accident. Hang on. I can't see myself now. Okay, hopefully you see me. I had a severe accident, and my car turned around 3 times. And the severe accident was I was passing somebody, and he went to the side and he pushed me off the road. For years, when I passed somebody, I felt my body turning around. I sat behind the wheel, but I could still feel that turning. That's the Po. And so it's also when somebody is mad with you or angry with you, you feel a sensation. That sensation comes from the past, but it is reactivated at a certain moment. And that is most important to understand that. And so when you look at the 7 Po, the perception you have, the emotion you feel, that is a Po reaction. You can treat that, and it's very good to treat, but you treat that with the Hun, not so much with the Po. So these are things of the Po. Hopefully you have read that. It's a lot of information, but I'm not going into that now. But it's good that you have this, that you can reread that again. But there are 7 kinds of Po: earth, metal, water, wood, fire, and there's a yin and a yang Po. Yeah. These are the symptoms you see of the 7 Po. So it means that when they worry or they have regret, if there's self-doubt, and there are more, that is related to earth. When there's anger, that's related to a wood Po, etc., etc. And these are aspects of the Hun. So when there is a earth identity, there is an issue, there is also an issue of integrity. When there is grief or shame, guilt, actually in Chinese medicine, they don't talk about guilt so much. I think in all the books I've read, that twice I have seen something about guilt, but they mostly talk about shame, not so much about guilt. Guilt is something from the West. Shame is more from the East. But also that is related to integrity and righteousness. And righteousness is not something from outside. It's not laws and so, or legislations. It's something from inside, what you know is right. What you for yourself know is right. And so fear and loneliness, etc. And so you can go on. These are more the Hun aspects of, no, the Hun entrance treating the 7 Po. And here I give you some examples, just to, you have to see them. We could discuss all the points by themselves, but that's not about heavenly stems. But when you treat this Hun, to treat the 7 Po imbalance, you balance the horizontal level. And then only it's possible to recreate a integrated Jing Shen vertical axis. So it's very needed that when that sensation is there, and it comes from the Hun, from a disrespectful action which damage the Hun, then you can treat accordingly with these points besides all the Hun points you maybe know. Yeah, like liver 4, like on the back you have Hun points, the kidney 21, there are all the other points as well. Hopefully you know these, but these are also points. They work, for instance, bladder 10, Sanjiao 16 plus 6, CV70. They work on integrity and trust, and they work on the damaged Hun earth pole, and so on. Now, when we go to the great movement metal and the points related to it, then you find also liver 4, the metal point on the liver. This is a point which is important for how you adapt into the world. It's a horizontal plane again, yeah? Wood, metal. Animal instinct is pole. Adaptation is wood. Survival instinct, reaction to sensations, definitely Hun and pole. That the entrance to that process of understanding that that is a survival instinct you still have, you can open that by using liver 4. So the heavenly stem Yi is that leads to liver, that leads to liver in metal. Metal is very solid, is very material, you could say. It means that it needs practicality. So when people are not able to practice what they preach, then liver 4 is also a very good point to make it practical. Liver 4, maybe you have learned that, is for free flow of the chi of the ankle. But liver 4 is much more than that. First of all, the ankle itself is related, as a unit, it is related to the Sanjiao. Not the Sanjiao channel, but the deep Sanjiao function that it moves the Dong Qi, the moving Qi between the kidneys, and it does it through the Renmai, and it moves that up to all the other channels. So the flexibility of the ankle says a lot about the flexibility and the entrance to the moving Qi between the kidneys, and how the Sanjiao through the Renmai divides that through the 3 dimensions of yourself. And so the free flow of Qi in the ankle is related to the lower burner. And so everything what's there. And in the lower burner, there is your sexual energy, it is your foundation of yourself. And from that aspect, you connect to the world. So liver 4, together with a Renmai point in the lower jiao or in the middle jiao, lower jiao, Jing, middle jiao, social relationship. So liver 4 with points on the lower jiao or middle jiao helps you to act within the world you're living in. And you get entrance to your foundation of your being. So liver 4 is described as a point which balances the 3 Hun and 7 Po. So also the immaterial and material, what is intentional, what is instinctive, what is Hun and what is Po. Yeah. So it is important to understand it. It is not a trick, as I said in one of the first slides. It is not, this thought model is not that you can use it as a trick, but you need the timing and see, is it possible? They have ideas, but they can't practice it. Or they try to do it, but they have no idea where it comes from. Then liver 4 is really good. And it goes together with, when people walk, you see that the ankles are actually stiff. And maybe they have pain in the ankles, but they usually are quite stiff. Large intestine 1, Shang Yang. Shang is hardly used in points, but only in metal points, like lung 11 is the same. Large intestine 1 is about clear judgment, clarity. Metal is like a mirror. As you see here, the great movement and the stem point, large intestine 1, both metal. So it's like a mirror. You can see yourself. You can see the world. So there is clarity, not by doing bad to other people, but really with the idea of doing good. To let go of things without any judgment. This is not what I want. This is what I want. I don't want this kind of behavior of my father, of myself, of my mother, whatever. There's no flexibility. There's no compensation. It's clear, but without the feeling of anger. It is as it is. It's like you are yourself, not more, not less, because both more and less don't go well to you. Just be as you are. Yeah. Shang is often translated as merchant. A merchant is between people interacting. Shang is also a musical tone, and this time it belongs to the metal as described in these chapters you read here. It's a heavy, solid sound. But the sound itself is also when we speak, and the throat and the organs, all the organs here that produce sound in speech. Therefore, you see that a lot of times large intestine 1 is used when there are problems in the throat. How do we communicate with the world? Yeah. And sound helps you to know your position in the world. So without knowing, when you walk in the streets and you hear a car coming, nowadays it's more difficult with all these electric cars, but when you hear a car coming or a bus, you know it, where it is. Or when you hear the sounds of birds or the sounds of planes, you know your position in the world. That's what metal does as well. And it's very important for people working with trauma that they know their position in this net of people around them. And from that, you can make a decision. Sound makes us being able to decide what you like, what you dislike, how do you want to deal with it? Do you want to be defensive or offensive? You want to move away, you want to move towards. That's what sound does. And don't forget that diseases created by sound are very, very difficult to treat. The most severe diseases can occur from a constant buzzing sound, for instance. Then you're not able to make any decision anymore. You lose your interconnection with the world. You get completely, you don't know anymore. Yeah. I think I said this. Yeah, I think this is also important. When the majority of these 7 openings, 7 po, are blocked, like you don't hear well, you don't see good, your nose is blocked, things like that. So they are blocked through pathogenic qi. Then large intestine 1 is a good point. It opens up the po, it opens up the sense organs, and sometimes you need to tonify, sometimes you need to sedate. And this is very crucial because sedation is often not seen. Because what I've seen in observation, supervision, is that when the large intestine is very tight, very, very tight, you hardly feel it anymore. You think it's weak and it's thin. And it's actually not. A very tight pulse, you can feel very in the depths. It's very difficult to feel. But when then you sedate large intestine 1, it suddenly comes up. Yeah. And that goes together with signs of dryness, constipation, stagnation, emotional stagnation, completely blocked. Then sedating large intestine 1, first of all, takes away the pain, which goes together with all these symptoms. But secondly, it allows you to listen to the sounds again and to find your own position in life. The great movement water has to do with integration, intuition. That's what we are looking for. Yeah. The Zi, as you remember, the foundation of the Zi is the heart. It's not your personal desire, but it is how love is expressed through the heart. But the top part of the character is very straight. Yeah, it is firm. It knows its direction, but it can only know it when it is from an integrated Jing Shen. Now, you have Shen, Yi, Zi. That determine our orientation in life. Yeah. Any new idea, any process of renewal, which is also processing trauma, starts with the integration of Shen, Yi, Zi. But you can only do it when that horizontal plane is more or less balanced, that there is the possibility of introspection, metal, when there is a stable identity and integrity, earth, then you can come to the integration and maybe the intuition of love. That's for later, maybe. Okay, let's go to small intestine 2, which is one of the most important points when you want to seek for integration. So small intestine 2, you listen to the heart. It's a point not often used. It is a point which usually is used for issues in the hand or the pulse or something like that, shoulder maybe. It's the water point of small intestine, but that is what it does. It expresses the purpose of the heart. The Yi, remember? Shen, Yi, and the Yi becomes Zi when the Yi is persevering. It becomes Zi. So the expression of the heart through your will, and not your desires, but through your inner will. So through your rooting, the understanding of your authentic self, the understanding of the root of everyone, which you also stand on and individually express, that you can erect yourself, that you can be yourself. It leads to excitement and sometimes sudden awareness of things. And it's not like a trick that you can do it with everybody, because it needs a long preparation together with a counselor often. Yeah. But when you find the right moment, it really can open up. It really opens people up to who they want to be, who they like to be, who they actually are. So you use it when people cannot accept what's happening. They all the time talk about how bad their father, how bad their mother, how bad their circumstances are, etc., etc. They're not connected to themselves. They feel frustrated and they actually project it to the outside world. And small intestine 2, when you do it at the right moment, it really strengthens the state of their being and helps to calm people. Yeah. Then lung 5, also a very important point. Sorry. That's a point which, when you follow the flow of qi from lung 1 to its own, lung 5 is where it opens to the outside, but immediately also protects the inside. And it really, in lung 5, there is this interaction of outside inside. It's a marsh. I think I'll talk about that later. Yeah, marsh can often be found at the edges of lakes and streams where they form a transition between aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems. So that is the area of lung 5 where you connect with your inner self and you connect with the outside world. So at the same time, it protects and it strengthens the Zheng Qi, the inside Qi, the strength, your Wei Qi, your individual resilience. It accepts what is. Reconciliation starts often with lung 5. When you find the right moment, it can lead to reconciliation. It means that you are awake, but you don't interfere. You look inside, you look outside. You are in that middle position and you do what's necessary, listening to your inside and what is needed in the world. That is the intuition of love, the intuition of the true self. Now, lung 5 descends the qi, earth fluids, and disperses the body fluids for urination and lubrication of the intestines. That's what it does physically. But the descending of fluids increases the perseverance by strengthening both will and authenticity. And I mean with will, the will of the heart. So it reconnects the heart and the jinn, you could say, the authentic love which is in everybody. Yeah. So lung 5 opens someone's true nature. Some people sedate lung 5. I never ever have sedated lung 5. It is described in books that you can sedate lung 5, but the side effect is that you lose that position, that you can't be yourself. Maybe you get rid of the phlegm or the damp or whatever, but you lose that quality of being yourself. So it facilitates and eases the flow of water, especially in agitation and stubbornness. It means that you can go with the flow, standing in that position of that marsh, that maybe you want some chi from that marsh, some fluids, or maybe the marsh takes the fluids. So you do what is necessary in that position. This is described that physical, emotional, mental rigidity may lead to protest or avoidance, etc., etc. These are the rigidity when there is no connection to that marsh. You're not in that position that you can be fluid. You can be flowing with it and not losing yourself. Instead, you are yourself and you flow without interfering. Now, lung 5 is the gate on the lung channel where qi opens to the more external aspects of the body. And that's what lung 7 does. And that, I think, is the last point I want to discuss. Because lung 7 is that you release the emotions that go together with the trauma. But you can only do that when there is a certain kind of position that you are in that marsh, that you may connect to yourself and you can connect to the world. And when you find that position, that you don't interfere with your desires all the time, but you really feel the emotion, you feel the disrespect which damaged your hun, which activated a certain pole, that you can see the process of it, then suddenly you can see people that they are silent and there's a little grief and maybe 2 or 3 drops of tears, not crying a lot. And then you know that's the release of the emotion through lung 7. And sometimes you have to do it, and sometimes you don't have to do it, only by lung 5, sometimes other points. That suddenly that deep release of grief and sadness or chest pain or everything suddenly relaxes. But it doesn't lead to really devastated emotions, but the release of some tears, and they feel the tears and they feel the sadness, but it also calms the mind and settles the hun. Do we have time for questions, maybe?
Yes, thank you, Johan. We do have some questions in the chat. All right, so we have a question from Graham. Have you found that patients presenting with long COVID also have some similar presentations as to having a disconnected vertical axis?
Very much so, because the COVID and also the vaccination of COVID, but also the COVID disease itself creates a lot of heat in the body, and it disconnects you from the jing, and you find lots of signs of heat. And that could be that hair falls out, or heat in the lungs, or you can find heat in the brains, or heat in the heart. And it really disconnects from the jing. So definitely you find a lot of issues there. Thank you for that question. It's really helpful.
Thank you. And Penny asks, what is shame in terms of the great movements of the stems?
Shame.
Shame.
Shame. It's a longer story, but I try to keep it as well, short and easy as possible. First of all, shame has the tendency to disappear, to hide. We don't connect to shame so much because we don't see it, because shame wants to hide also for yourself. That's one difficult thing. Shame is from the heart and pericardium and lungs. It's the level of the thorax. That's where shame resides. and usually it hides in the area of the diaphragm, but it doesn't go lower. Guilt goes lower, goes to the lower jaw, but shame stays here. So this could be the area of earth, identity, integrity, and it could be the area of fire, of intuition, love, interaction, great movement fire. So it's great movement fire, great movement earth. Lung could be also there. The lungs is more great movement water. So what you see is the vertical axis. Great movement fire, intuition is damaged, the connection is damaged. Great movement earth, this area, and great movement water, lung in water, maybe you remember that. That's the vertical axis. So your resilience is definitely disrupted.
Thank you. Shauna asks, how, no, that's not it. Are concussion symptoms related to the PO?
That's the question, if concussion symptoms are related to the PO. First of all, it's related to the Jing Shen, especially Jing. The concussion creates heat in the Jing, and because of that, it attracts fluids. And the treatment of it is the sedation of kidney 2, beside other things, but that's the first aid treatment. But the sensation of it, the feelings beyond that, that somebody experienced a concussion, that falling or that pain or that being in bed for 2 days, that sensation which belongs to that you feel maybe in your stomach or maybe you feel it in your heart, that is the Po instinctive reaction. That is a cruelty to your body. It's a kind of threat to your being, and life is threat. How do you say that? I forgot the name for it. It's like it's damaging your being, and it means that feeling that you're not safe anymore. That is the Po. That's the reaction of the Po. But feeling awkward, feeling lonely, feeling powerless, that's the Hun. The reaction is the Po, and the Po remembered that physical reaction. So every time when you confront a concussion or possibility of it, that sensation comes back and react. But the Hun is the powerlessness, for instance. But the concussion itself is kidney related.
Thank you. Penny's asking, would large intestine 1 treat tinnitus?
In some cases, yes. In some cases, especially when it is related to the lung. If some tinnitus is related to the lung, and definitely then large intestine 1 treats that. But it's not in all tinnitus. Tinnitus is a very difficult and broad spectrum of causes that are related. It's not only large intestine 1. But it definitely will open the way people listen, even if they have tinnitus. They listen differently.
Thank you. Also from Penny, if someone is born with a particular stem, would that mean they already have the qualities and lessons of the preceding stems available in this lifetime? Or is it a case of the stem of a person in this lifetime being an indication of their main task lesson in this lifetime?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. It is. There are predispositions. If you are born gallbladder and earth, there is a certain quality which defines the identity. But the way you deal with the challenges, because in stems and branches acupuncture or constitutional acupuncture, when you are born gallbladder and earth, it means that spleen and earth has a tendency to be weaker. The way you solve that imbalance is up to that person. And it also, the circumstances, if there's a trauma in between, it will be very different if there's a very safe environment. But the choices are made, there are free choices in everyone. So the way we deal with it is the way we'll develop. It's not a fixed pattern. So I think as a practitioner, you must be able to diagnose how a person faces the challenges and how it leads to illnesses.
Okay, thank you. And I think it's the final question from Sonia. Do you needle on the right for women and left for men, or bilateral?
Mostly what he said, right for women and left for men. In some cases it's different, because sometimes the point on the right side, it has a different energetic outcome than the left side. So sometimes you choose opposite, and in some cases, in some days and months, it's not good to treat on the right or the left. So in that, maybe a woman you treat on the left, but in general, I treat women on the right and men on the left.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's all the questions for the moment. I have a question. How did you get through 84 slides and finish perfectly on time? That was
I don't know. That's how it goes. Yeah.
That was great. Okay, guys, thank you so much for these questions. I think we have one more actually from Penny. As the Po relate to different great movements, do the Po also relate to different cycles of Jing?
Yes. Short answer, it does. That's a long lecture, but it does. They're definitely in certain periods of lifetime where, let's say, the fire is important, the Po relates to the fire, becomes more prominent. Yeah, but not in a negative way.
Okay, thank you. That's all, guys. So we have all the questions come through now. Just want to say two more things before we finish up for Yuan, on behalf of Yuan. So as you guys know, Yuan also has his book, which was launched somewhat recently. And just before I get that slide, I just want to share this slide with you guys. This is from Peter, who's actually one of our supporters from Qiology. And fortunately, Yuan has done actually quite a few seminars. If you were here in the very beginning, he mentioned he came to Australia twice. And fortunately, Peter has had them actually recorded. So if you're interested in doing some online work for Yuan's work for the Stems and Branches curriculum, there's actually quite a bit of work that is done with Peter from Qiology. And
I'll say a few words about him, because that in June there will be probably the lecture about the Great Movement in Heavenly Stems is coming out, and that's videoed. It's not recorded only on sound, but it's videoed and edited, and hopefully also the branch will come out this year. And there are already some like pediatrics and facial diagnosis and post-diagnostic. I did some practical workshop. They're all videoed and edited, and the last two you can already buy with Qiology, and the other two, like Stems and Branches, they will come during this year, and they're very nice recorded.
yeah, thank you for that, because I know Peter quite well. He's from Australia, and he's very, very peculiar with his work and obviously his recording. So they're very good quality. And here's all the links for you. So on your slides, you didn't see it on your own slides, but this is on your own slides. They're all clickable links. So if you want to have a look at those links, they're all going to take you to Qiology's website, qiology.com.au, and all the seminars that he has there are there for you. And then lastly, of course, the actual book from Yuan Devine, Applying Stems and Branches, Acupuncture in Clinical Practice. That's the book cover if you don't already know. Of course, you can get it from Europe in the UK, and these are all clickable links as well. So that's the UK link, and then the US, and then of course from any local bookstore. And I think that's a Singing Dragon. So Singing Dragon also has their own shops. And if you're in Australia, I would assume, again, local bookstore, Amazon, but also Singing Dragon actually has an Australian branch. I think it's like au.singingdragon or something like that. But you can also get that from there. So that's Yuan's book, and highly recommend it. I'm waiting on mine to arrive. So thank you again, guys, for your engagement, for your questions. Let me just see if there's anything else that's come through.
Well, for me, thank you as well, Sohail, and all the participants. It's great to have all these people here and so familiar faces. It's really nice to reconnect again and being able to share this knowledge about trauma.
Yes, thank you. I enjoyed it as much as the feedback that we're getting from many people saying thank you and lovely presentation, great presentation. So again, thank you all for your engagement and for your questions. Thank you so much, Yuan, for your participation and for committing yourself to this project as the very first speaker. I enjoyed it very much and look forward to the recording. Now, just before everyone goes, I know you're thinking about this, so let me just say this. So the recording, if you have the platinum ticket, which includes the recording, normally within 2 or 3 days after each session, including this session, I will have the recording. Now, if you've been doing some work with me before, you know that I'm super quick with this stuff. So I say 2 and 3 days for safety, because otherwise I'll get 500 emails. But normally it's within about 1 day, 2 at the most, I'll have the recording up and ready. And there'll also be on that email, a short video instruction on how to actually retrieve the recording. So all the recordings will go up on one platform. So it's very easy. You'll have one username, one password, and every 2-3 days or less, you'll have the recording of each individual session that will go up. So please look out for that, both your primary email and junk. And in regards to CPDs, I've mentioned that in the welcome video, but that's all going to be taken care of at the end of the conference. So there's not going to be any certificates going out after every session, because that's just going to be too messy. Up until then, the next session is Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard, Melbourne, Sydney time. And we have Andrew Sturman talking about food as medicine for anxiety and also mental health concerns, a Chinese medicine-based approach. So again, you'll have a 24-hour email that will go up to remind you, and also a 1 hour before we start the live session to go out, and please look out for that as well. So I won't take any more of your time. Thank you to everyone who's joined us. Thank you for those who'll be watching the recording. And most of all, thank you, Johan, for taking this time just before you go on holiday to make sure that you fit this course in for us. Appreciate your knowledge and wisdom, and we hope to catch you soon at some point.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you soon online.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy your holiday.
Thank you. Yes.
It's winter here. We don't go on holiday at the moment.
Sorry? It's winter with
It's
you.
winter
Yeah.
here. Yeah, so we won't be going on here. It's raining and it's cold.
Okay, no, we will enjoy sun, hopefully.
Yeah. Where are
Yeah.
you going?
Switzerland.
Oh, lovely.
Switzerland.
I'm sure,
Visiting my
I'm sure
brother.
you will enjoy it.
Yeah. It's
Right.
hopefully the
I'm sure
weather
you
will be
enjoy
good.
it.
Yes, I will. I will.
Yeah. Okay. Cheers.
Good to see you. Bye. Bye, Penny. Bye, Miriam.
Hi.